Imagine this. You spend an entire week trapped behind a desk, answering emails, dealing with deadlines, and counting the hours until freedom finally arrives. Then, Saturday comes. You pack a tent, throw some supplies into your truck, and head toward the mountains. Fresh air, quiet forests, no traffic, no phone calls, just nature. Now imagine that a simple weekend getaway turns into an experience so terrifying that years later, you still replay every detail in your head, wondering how close you came to disappearing forever. Today's story isn't about monsters. It isn't about ghosts. It's about something far more disturbing. Because sometimes the most frightening thing you can encounter in the wilderness is another human being. And in this case, a routine camping trip in the Appalachian Mountains would eventually become connected to a missing person case that remains unsolved to this day. Let's begin. For many outdoor enthusiasts, the Appalachian Mountains represent freedom. Stretching across multiple states, the range contains thousands of miles of trails, hidden campsites, scenic overlooks, and untouched forests. Every year, millions of hikers visit the region seeking adventure and peace. Most return home with nothing more than good memories and photographs. But not everyone does. The story begins with a young couple who loved spending weekends outdoors. Like many people balancing demanding careers, they viewed camping as an escape from modern life. Every Friday evening, they would start discussing possible destinations. By Saturday morning, they were usually on the road. Over time, they became experienced campers. They knew how to set up tents quickly. They understood mountain weather. They were comfortable spending nights far away from civilization. Most importantly, they had developed confidence. And confidence can sometimes make unusual situations seem less threatening than they really are. On one particular weekend, they selected a relatively short trail leading to a remote mountain campsite. The trail itself wasn't obscure. Online reviews suggested it was reasonably popular. That detail would later make everything seem even stranger. Because when they arrived, almost nobody was there. The weather wasn't ideal. Rain clouds hung low over the mountains. Steady rainfall soaked the surrounding forest. Still, neither of them was concerned. Mountain weather changes constantly. Experienced hikers often learn to accept rain as part of the experience. As they pulled up near the trailhead, they noticed only one other vehicle parked nearby. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Then, they saw something odd. The passenger door was partially open, not wide open, just enough to allow rainwater inside. Naturally, they assumed the owner had accidentally failed to close it completely. The boyfriend walked over and pushed it shut. The interior was already soaked. Considering the vehicle appeared expensive and relatively new, the situation felt unusual. Most people notice when their car door isn't fully closed. Most people lock their vehicles before leaving them unattended. But the couple shrugged it off. People make mistakes, or at least that's what they assumed. Looking back, many viewers might identify this as the first warning sign. The problem is that warning signs rarely look important when they first appear. Only later do they gain meaning. And that's exactly what happened here. The couple grabbed their gear and began hiking. The trail wound upward through wet forest terrain. Rain tapped against leaves overhead. The ground became muddy. Despite the weather, the hike itself felt normal. Nothing seemed wrong. Nothing felt dangerous. 2 hours later, they reached the campground. That's when they discovered another surprise. A small tent already occupied the center of the clearing. It appeared tiny, barely large enough for one adult. The couple assumed someone was sheltering inside from the rain. Not wanting to disturb whoever was there, they chose a distant corner and set up camp. For a while, everything seemed perfectly ordinary. They ate snacks, dried equipment, relaxed, listened to rainfall striking the tent fabric. Then, voices appeared outside. At first, they couldn't understand what was being said. The rain was too loud. When the boyfriend unzipped the tent, he found 2 men kneeling directly outside, only a few feet away. The sudden appearance startled him. The men introduced themselves. According to them, they had been staying at the campground for several days. The conversation remained polite, brief. Nothing openly threatening occurred. Yet both campers immediately sensed something wasn't right. And this is where intuition becomes an important topic. Psychologists often discuss subconscious threat detection. Our brains process enormous amounts of information without conscious awareness. body language, facial expressions, movement patterns, tone of voice. Tiny details combine into a feeling we commonly describe as a bad vibe. The challenge is that many people ignore those feelings because they can't identify a specific reason. The couple experienced exactly that sensation. The men's story didn't seem to fit reality. Their clothing looked wrong for extended camping. Their equipment looked insufficient. The tiny tent didn't seem capable of comfortably housing 2 adults for several days. None of these observations proved criminal intent. Yet together, they created unease. After the conversation ended, the men returned to their campsite. The couple watched from inside their tent. Nothing unusual happened. Hours passed. Darkness arrived. Eventually, they went to sleep. And that's when the situation transformed from strange to terrifying. Sometime during the night, the boyfriend woke up. Like many campers, he needed to step outside briefly. Rain still fell steadily. The forest remained dark and silent, or almost silent, because while standing near the trees, he heard voices, distant, unclear, difficult to locate. The sound immediately triggered concern. When people are deep in the wilderness at night, unusual noises carry extra weight. Every sound seems amplified. Every uncertainty becomes more significant. He scanned the darkness. Then he noticed something alarming. The neighboring tent appeared empty. Its entrance stood open. No visible occupants, no movement, no sign of the 2 men. This observation raised a disturbing question. If they weren't inside their tent, where were they? Many survival experts emphasize a simple principle. Unknown people become most dangerous when you lose track of their location. The boyfriend hurried back. He woke his girlfriend. Together they discussed their options. Should they leave? Should they stay? Were they overreacting? Then both heard voices behind their tent. Not far away. Close. Too close. At that moment, uncertainty disappeared. Fear became real. The boyfriend grabbed a small pocket knife, not because he expected it would provide meaningful protection, but because people naturally seek any available advantage when frightened. He stepped outside, and what he saw would remain burned into his memory for years. The 2 men stood among the trees, watching, motionless, silent. No conversation, no explanation, no smiles, just staring. This moment represents something many crime survivors describe afterward. Sometimes danger isn't communicated through action. Sometimes it's communicated through presence. The fact that the men simply stood there made the encounter more frightening. There was no misunderstanding, no innocent explanation, no camping-related reason to stand outside someone else's tent in the middle of a rainy night. The situation felt wrong because it was wrong. The boyfriend later described feeling completely frozen. For several seconds, neither side moved. Then his girlfriend looked outside. That broke the paralysis. He shouted for her to run. And they did. They abandoned equipment, supplies, personal belongings, everything except what they carried. Many viewers might wonder whether this reaction was excessive. In hindsight, absolutely not. One of the most common mistakes people make in dangerous situations is waiting too long. They seek certainty. They want proof. Unfortunately, proof often arrives too late. The couple chose action instead, and that decision may have saved their lives. They sprinted down the mountain. Rain hammered the trail. Adrenaline pushed them forward. Every shadow seemed threatening. Every noise sounded like pursuit. Yet strangely, nobody chased them. The men simply watched. This detail creates another layer of mystery. Why remain still? Why not pursue them? Were they surprised? Were they waiting for a different opportunity? Or had their objective already changed? Nobody knows. Eventually, the couple reached the parking area, and there sat the same vehicle from earlier. Only now the passenger door was open once again, exactly as before. For many people, this detail is the creepiest part of the story, because it suggests the open door may never have been accidental. Instead, it may have been connected to something much darker. The couple immediately drove away and contacted authorities. At first, the incident seemed like little more than suspicious behavior. Disturbing, certainly, but difficult to investigate. Then investigators discovered information that changed everything. The vehicle belonged to an older man recently reported missing. Not overdue by a few hours. Missing. His personal belongings were gone. The tent at the campsite belonged to him, and he was nowhere to be found. Neither were the 2 men. At this point, the story shifts from a frightening camping encounter to a genuine mystery. What happened to the missing camper? Why was his tent occupied? Where did his possessions go? Who were the two men? Unfortunately, investigators found few answers, only footprints, no arrests, no clear evidence, no resolution. Years later, the case remains deeply unsettling. Stories like this often generate intense debate online. Some people argue the men may have been thieves. Others suspect something far worse. Without evidence, certainty is impossible. However, history provides numerous examples showing that remote recreational areas sometimes attract dangerous individuals. For example, criminal investigations across North America have documented cases involving isolated campgrounds where offenders specifically targeted people because help was far away. The wilderness offers privacy not only for hikers, but also for criminals. This doesn't mean camping is inherently dangerous. Millions of people enjoy outdoor recreation safely every year. But it does highlight an important reality. Isolation increases vulnerability. The farther someone is from assistance, the more valuable situational awareness becomes. Let's examine several lessons this story teaches. First, trust intuition. People often dismiss uncomfortable feelings because they fear appearing paranoid. Yet intuition frequently develops from subtle observations that the conscious mind hasn't fully processed. Second, pay attention to inconsistencies, the tiny tent, the unusual clothing, the missing vehicle owner. None of these details proved anything individually. Together, they formed a pattern. Third, prioritize escape over confrontation. Many survival specialists recommend avoiding conflict whenever possible. The couple didn't investigate. They didn't challenge the strangers. They left. That decision removed them from danger. Fourth, always inform others of your location. One reason search and rescue teams successfully locate missing hikers is because someone knew where those hikers planned to go. Communication saves lives. Finally, remember that nature itself wasn't the threat in this story. The rain wasn't dangerous. The forest wasn't dangerous. The mountain wasn't dangerous. The real danger came from human intentions hidden behind ordinary appearances. And that's often what makes true stories more frightening than fiction. A storm can be predicted. A trail can be mapped. Wildlife behavior can be studied. But human behavior remains far less predictable. The couple never learned exactly what those men intended. Perhaps that's why the experience stayed with them for so long. The human mind struggles with unanswered questions. We want conclusions. We want certainty. Instead, they were left with possibilities. And sometimes possibilities are more haunting than facts. Somewhere in the Appalachian wilderness, an older man vanished. His vehicle remained behind. His tent remained behind. 2 unidentified men occupied his campsite, then disappeared. Whether those events were directly connected may never be proven, but the timing is difficult to ignore. Today, countless campers continue exploring those mountains. Most will enjoy peaceful adventures, campfires, sunrises, beautiful trails. Yet stories like this serve as reminders that awareness matters, preparation matters, instinct matters. Because occasionally, the difference between a memorable camping trip and a tragedy comes down to recognizing danger before it fully reveals itself. And if there's one lesson worth taking away from this mystery, it's this. You do not need absolute proof that something is wrong before protecting yourself. If a situation feels dangerous, leaving is not weakness. It is wisdom. The couple trusted their instincts. They walked away. And unlike the missing camper whose fate remains unknown, they lived to tell the story. Sometimes that alone is the best possible ending.